What kind of crap is this? The fat manager sitting in the boss's chair across the table looked extremely angry. He threw the document I had stayed up all night working on right at my face and said viciously, "I'll give you one more day. If you can't come up with something decent in one day, you're out of here." Looking at his grotesque fat face, I was burning with anger. I had had enough of this arrogant and tyrannical guy. He was embezzling company funds on a large scale, living a life of debauchery, while treating his subordinates harshly, barking orders and not treating us like humans. I really wanted to throw the document back at him, beat him up, and tell him I quit, then walk out the door with style. But I couldn't do that, at least not now. Because I still needed his paycheck to fill my stomach. But should I keep swallowing my anger like this? Of course not. I decided to play a prank on him, to expose his true nature and make him a laughingstock in front of everyone. If I didn't do that, I wouldn't be able to relieve the hatred in my heart. But I couldn't do this alone. After some consideration, I found Jason. Jason was the fat pig's driver and my best friend in private. There was also an important reason for finding him. He particularly hated the fat pig, even to the point of gnashing his teeth, because that guy always found various reasons to dock his salary. "Chris, just tell me what to do. I'll follow your lead." The skinny Jason licked his lips excitedly after hearing my idea. I smiled and then whispered a few words in his ear. The result of careful planning was that everything went exceptionally smoothly. In no time, the end of the workday arrived, and the entire building quickly emptied out. Jason and I carried a large cardboard box to the manager's office. As expected, the fat pig was snoring thunderously, slumped over his desk. "Are you sure he won't wake up?" Jason asked worriedly as we struggled to put the fat pig into the box. "Don't worry, he won't wake up for at least 5 hours." I trusted the effect of the drug, even though I had only added a little something to the fat pig's coffee. Soon, the fat pig was all packed up. We placed him on the company's two-wheeled cart used for loading and unloading goods, and then Jason and I pushed it into the elevator. Along the way, I tried to hide my nervousness, doing my best to act nonchalant. When we exited the company building, I even greeted the security guard, David. But Jason was visibly nervous. Even after starting the car, I saw his hands were still shaking as he gripped the steering wheel. "Chris, do you think the boss will fire us if he finds out about this?" Jason asked worriedly, glancing at the box in the back seat. The security guard saw us when we left. "Just focus on driving. Don't worry, that security guard is my buddy. He won't say anything." I reassured Jason, but inside I was secretly cursing. How could I have overlooked that the security guard hadn't left yet? It seemed I would have to bribe him well tomorrow. The car sped down the road, and the scenery outside gradually darkened. Half an hour later, we finally arrived at our destination. It was a desolate area on the outskirts of town. The few shops along the road were dark and lifeless. Only a few giant garbage bins stood by the roadside, like monsters with gaping mouths, ready to devour everything. The sky was overcast, and it looked like it was going to rain. I pulled my head back from the car door and signaled to Jason to open the box and strip the fat pig. A few minutes later, the still sleeping fat pig was stripped down to just his shorts. He now looked more like a giant, flesh-colored worm. "You're not planning to throw him down the slope, are you?" "That could kill him," Jason asked, looking at the rocky, thorn-covered slope on the other side of the road. "Of course not," I spat at the drooling fat pig and pointed to the garbage bins by the road. "I just want him to spend the night here." "Huh, you're really something." With a loud thud and a swarm of flies taking flight, we threw the fat pig into the garbage bin like a cannonball. I leaned over to take a look. The garbage, vegetable leaves, and scraps had completely surrounded him. He still seemed to be in a deep sleep. I guaranteed he had never slept on such a comfortable bed in his life. On the way back, the night sky began to drizzle, but it didn't affect my good mood at all. This despicable guy, he finally got what he deserved. Just imagine, when the fat pig wakes up and finds himself stark naked in a disgusting garbage bin, what kind of expression will he have? Jason and I laughed maniacally. I was almost humming a tune when I got home, but after I showered, the rain outside still hadn't stopped. In fact, it seemed to be getting heavier. I couldn't stay happy. I even felt a slight worry. My plan had been flawless, but damn it, why did it have to rain so hard tonight? Would the rainwater fill up the garbage bin and drown the fat pig? And what about the thousands of hungry rats in the garbage bin? Would they tear the still-breathing fat pig apart? I was getting anxious. After hesitating for a while, I got up and called Jason. "We have to get the fat pig back, or we might end up as murderers," I said. The rain pounded on the car windows, and I sat in the passenger seat, anxious and restless. Jason was about to complain, but my fierce glare shut him up. The car finally made its way back to the destination with difficulty. Through the glass, I could see the giant garbage bins looming in the rain. As soon as I opened the car door and stuck my head out, I was hit by the heavy raindrops. Damn it, I forgot to bring an umbrella when we left. But we couldn't wait for the fat pig. We had to get him out as soon as possible. Helplessly, Jason and I covered our heads and rushed into the pouring rain. "Are you sure it's this bin?" Jason shouted several times through the wind and rain before I could hear him. Yes, I was sure. But after digging through the bin, all we found were rotten vegetable leaves, watermelon rinds, and spoiled leftovers. The fat pig was nowhere to be seen. We were unwilling to give up and searched through the other bins, even tipping them over with all our strength, but still found nothing. "The rain is so heavy, maybe he woke up and left," Jason said as we rushed back to the car, wiping the rain off his face. "Yes, that's the most likely possibility," I said. "Otherwise, how could the sleeping fat pig disappear without a trace? Even if he drowned, there should still be a body, right?" Jason had already started the car and was ready to leave, but I still had a nagging worry. This time it was his turn to comfort me. "Don't overthink it. I have a feeling that fat pig will show up at the office alive and well tomorrow." Before he could finish, my phone suddenly rang. I picked it up and saw it was David, the company security guard, calling. Why would he call me so late? "Chris. I guarantee you'll be fired tomorrow. I saw you and Jason throw the boss into the garbage bin." David's voice came through the phone, blunt and direct. "What are you talking about?" I was shocked and almost jumped up. This bastard not only followed us but also saw what we did. Damn it, I was so careless not to notice him. "Chris, don't worry, I haven't reported you. And by the way, the bin you chose wasn't creative enough. What I mean is, it wasn't smelly enough. After you left, I moved him to a nearby sewer, full of mud and filth, perfect for trash like him. That damn fat pig slapped me and docked my pay for half a month just because my hat was crooked the other day. You're committing murder," I shouted, cutting David off, while signaling Jason to turn the car around. No wonder we couldn't find the fat pig, he had been moved by this meddling security guard. But now the situation was even worse. As far as I knew, most of the sewers in this area were blocked due to lack of maintenance. With the heavy rain tonight, if the fat pig was really in the sewer, he would either drown or suffocate. I took a deep breath and said into the phone, "David, tell me right now, which sewer is it?" There was silence on the other end of the line. David was obviously scared stiff. Maybe he hadn't realized the seriousness of the situation until now. After a while, his voice came back, trembling, "Chris, he won't die, will he? I can't say for sure which sewer it is. I'll come over and help you find it." The torrential rain continued to pour down, but I had to pay the price for my not-so-clever prank. I silently prayed in my heart, "Fat pig, you need to stay strong and stay alive. I just need you to be alive. Even if you fire me tomorrow, even if you dock all my pay, even if I have to be your slave for a few more years, I would be willing. After all, these are nothing compared to being charged with murder." Since we didn't know exactly which sewer the fat pig was in, Jason and I had to search from the one closest to the garbage bin and work our way down the line. We took out all the tools we could use from the car and started working hard in the pouring rain. Finally, we pried open the first sewer cover. Looking down, it was pitch black, like it led to an endless abyss. I shone the flashlight down, and with its weak light, Jason climbed down step by step using the ladder. Finally, he reached the bottom. Fortunately, the water only reached his waist. From my position, I could barely see Jason's dark head. He took a deep breath and submerged his head in the mixture of rainwater, sewage, and sludge. After a while, he surfaced. I shouted, "Did you find anything?" His face was covered in dirty water and mud. He shook his head repeatedly. A cold shiver ran down my spine. As I pulled him up, his hands were unusually cold, and the rain-washed face was frighteningly pale. He must have caught a cold, so I decided to go down the next sewer while he stayed above to provide light. We opened the second sewer cover, and I carefully climbed down to the bottom. The rain kept pouring, and the water level had risen significantly, now reaching my chest. I thought regretfully that even if we found the fat pig now, he might already be dead. But we couldn't give up. No one wanted to go to jail for a prank. So, as long as there was a glimmer of hope, we had to keep searching. The stench in the sewer hadn't been washed away by the rain. I fought back the urge to vomit, held my breath, and dove underwater, groping through the sludge and rotting garbage. Suddenly, something seemed to grab my foot, and no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't break free. I stood up in fear and looked up to see Jason standing at the edge of the sewer like a wooden post. "Jason, pull me up," I shouted to him. But Jason remained unresponsive, standing there dazed. The pulling force grew stronger, and I felt like I could be dragged underwater at any moment. I struggled desperately, my hand accidentally touching the ladder on the sewer wall. Using all my strength, I climbed up, and with a splash, a dark, slimy object was pulled out of the water along with my body. I scrambled up and grabbed Jason's flashlight, shining it on the object wrapped around my leg. What was it? A dark, slimy mass. I struggled to pull it off and threw it on the road. Now I could see clearly, it was a long robe that had been worn by a dead person. The rain pounded on my forehead, and I swallowed hard. At that moment, Jason spoke. It was the first thing he had said since coming out of the previous sewer, and his voice was chillingly clear in the wind and rain. "This is a death robe. Anyone who gets tangled in it will die, will die." A flash of lightning streaked across the sky, and I shuddered. A death robe? Will die? I don't believe it. I stood up and kicked the dark mass into the sewer like it was a plague. Gritting my teeth, I grabbed Jason's hand and said, "Let's keep searching." Opening the third sewer cover almost exhausted all my strength. I had just sworn to myself that if we still didn't find the fat pig here, I would give up. Fat pig, if you drowned, then it must be fate. After all, we had done our best. Look at my expensive suit, it's all dirty and wet because of you. I sighed, bent down, and grabbed the ladder, ready to climb down. At that moment, Jason suddenly shivered, and his flashlight cast a strange beam of light before falling straight into the sewer. Instantly, we were plunged into darkness. Without a light source, going down into the deep sewer was undoubtedly suicidal. But I didn't blame Jason, after all, this whole mess was my idea. Then, I remembered there was a cell phone in the car. Although it might get wet in the rain, it was the only thing that could provide light now. I shouted to Jason and ran towards the car. When I got the phone and turned back, I was stunned because, in the flash of lightning, I saw Jason in a strange posture, looking down into the sewer. Why did I say it was strange? Because I saw Jason with his hands on the edge of the sewer, his head bent down into the sewer. What was he doing? Or what was he looking at? The bottom of the sewer was pitch black. What could he see? Before I could react, I heard the faint roar of an engine. The sound was not very clear in the storm. I looked in the direction of the sound, and through the blurred vision in the rain, I saw a dark shadow speeding towards Jason. When I finally realized it was a motorcycle, it was already rushing towards Jason at lightning speed. Jason didn't even have time to scream before he was pushed into the sewer by the speeding motorcycle. The motorcycle, having lost control from the impact, veered towards me. My legs went weak, and I quickly ducked under the car. With a loud crash, the motorcycle slammed into the car, bounced a few times, and then rolled to the ground. The rider didn't even have time to scream before he was thrown from the car, rolling down the slope by the roadside, quickly disappearing into the darkness, leaving only a large bloodstain on the car's hood. As the rain continued to wash away, the bloodstain gradually faded and eventually disappeared. I crawled out from under the car, dazed. The terrifying scene had almost destroyed all my willpower. How could this happen? I ran frantically towards the sewer on the road, kneeling at the entrance, shouting Jason's name over and over, but all I could hear was the wind and rain. The bottom of the sewer remained dark and silent. I then tried to find the body of the motorcyclist, or rather, to see if he was still alive. But the slope by the roadside was steep. I could barely see a few meters ahead, let alone find a path, so I had to give up. Should I call the police? At that moment, a figure flashed in my mind. Right, the security guard David, wasn't he supposed to come? My eyes suddenly caught sight of a motorcycle with a missing wheel by the roadside. I shuddered. Could it be that coincidental? I clearly remembered that David had a motorcycle with a broken headlight. I dialed David's phone number with trembling hands. A melodious ringtone sounded nearby. I turned around, and the sound was coming from the motorcycle's trunk. My suspicion was confirmed. Out of the 4 people involved in this farce, 3 might already be dead. The fat pig, Jason, David, only I'm still alive. I'm the only one alive. Wait, does this mean that only I know about this incident in the world right now? In other words, if I don't say anything, it's as if it never happened. I curled up in the deformed car, thinking that when the rain stopped I would walk back step by step. Then, when facing the police and my colleagues' inquiries, I would weave a web of lies to prove that I had nothing to do with this incident. I curled up in the deformed car, the darkness clinging to me like wet hair. I wanted a cigarette, but when I took out the pack, the rain had turned all the cigarettes into mush. I dejectedly threw away the mess, closed my eyes, and pounded my aching head with my fist. To make this all go away, I had to deal with the aftermath immediately. I got to work immediately. I put the sewer cover back in place, let the fat pig and Jason sleep there forever. As for the motorcycle wreckage, I stuffed it all into the car. Luckily, the deformed car could still start. I floored the gas pedal, and the car roared like a frightened beast, shooting down the hillside like an arrow. Of course, I had already jumped out of the car the moment it started. With a loud boom, a burst of firelight rose in the distant valley. By the next day, or maybe even before dawn, people would discover a baffling car accident. A driverless car carrying a broken motorcycle had crashed straight into the bottom of the valley. How could this happen? Such a headache should be left to the traffic police to solve. After finishing all this, I was almost exhausted. The rain had lessened a bit, and I had to thank the rain for that, otherwise, it would have been really hard to deal with those bloodstains. Now, I had to leave. But could I make it back? I didn't expect that a person could unleash such incredible potential in a crisis. In the pitch-black night, in the drizzling rain, I dragged my nearly collapsed body step by step back home. When I got home, the sky was just starting to lighten, but I had no time to rest. I quickly took a shower and changed into clean clothes. I knew that to avoid drawing attention, I had to get to work on time. Hurrying to the company entrance, I suddenly saw many employees gathered there. My heart tightened. Had the fat pig's disappearance been discovered? After asking around, I found out that today was the day the president was visiting the company. Everyone was preparing to line up and welcome him. A weight lifted off my chest, but when I looked up, I suddenly saw a familiar figure in the crowd, a deep blue uniform, a slightly overweight figure. It was clearly the security guard David. Wasn't he supposed to be dead from the crash last night? My head buzzed, and instinct told me that I had overlooked a fact: David wasn't dead. A wave of inexplicable panic swept over me. If he wasn't dead, did that mean he had seen everything I did last night? And were the fat pig and Jason still alive? I didn't dare to think any further. I rubbed my eyes hard and looked in David's direction again, but he was gone. I looked around again and still couldn't see him. It was just a hallucination. I smiled bitterly and walked into the company. I spent the entire morning in a state of anxiety, fearing that the fat pig or Jason would suddenly appear and drag me to the sewer to play games. Luckily, neither the fat pig nor Jason showed up for work, which greatly angered the visiting president. Just before noon, 2 police officers suddenly walked into my office. "Are you Chris? We need to ask you some questions." My heart sank. The inevitable had come. I couldn't avoid it. But this retribution was too fast, wasn't it? I forced myself to stay calm, repeatedly thinking about where I had gone wrong. "We tried calling you this morning, but your phone was off," one of the officers said expressionlessly. Phone. That damned phone. I had left it in the car, and the fire hadn't destroyed it. I cursed silently. Clearly, it had now become crucial evidence for the police to arrest me. This was fate: harming others ultimately harms oneself. I closed my eyes and extended my hands, ready to be handcuffed. "We received a report that your manager, Henry, is suspected of embezzlement. We were about to arrest him, but he suddenly disappeared along with the driver. We suspect he is trying to flee with the money. We need your help to provide some information." "Mr. Chen. Mr. Chen, are you alright?" Damn, they weren't here to arrest me. Life's ups and downs come too quickly, almost unbelievably. Even the police were after that fat pig. It seemed he really deserved to die. In that case, I was doing a good deed by getting rid of him. I perked up. "Officers, feel free to ask any questions. I will fully cooperate." In the afternoon, the president held a company-wide meeting to deeply discuss the major issue of the fat pig's embezzlement. After the meeting, a vote was held, and to my surprise, I was elected to replace the fleeing fat pig, becoming the youngest manager in the company's history. Life is indeed dramatic. Even after work, I was still immersed in the flowers and applause from my colleagues. Thinking about how I could finally hold my head high and make a name for myself, I couldn't help but hum a tune as I walked out of the company. "Chris." Someone suddenly called my name from behind. Hearing that voice, I froze, my whole body feeling like it was nailed to the spot. I turned around sharply but didn't see the person who had called me. "Who?" I asked, suppressing my anxiety. Yes, I couldn't help but be nervous because the voice that had just called me belonged to that damned security guard. Before I could turn fully, someone slapped me heavily on the shoulder. "Chris, it's me." Sure enough, standing before me was a man in uniform, slightly chubby, with a pale face, appearing like a ghost. "David, are you a ghost or what?" I was at a loss for words, the second half of my sentence stuck in my throat, and I could only stare at him with wide eyes. "Chris, you got it wrong, I'm Danny." A smile suddenly appeared on the security guard's face. "My brother didn't come home last night. Do you know where he went?" I let out a sigh of relief, remembering that David had a twin brother, also working as a security guard at the company. They really did look identical. But then again, I wouldn't have mistaken him if I hadn't done something wrong. Your brother? I quickly composed myself and pretended to be surprised. David has always been a responsible guy. How could he stay out all night? Do you want me to help you find him? Danny looked a bit downcast. I thought you might know. I saw him call you last night. I'll look for him again. If he doesn't come back tonight, will you go to the police with me tomorrow, Chris? He didn't call me, did he? You must have heard wrong. I was getting nervous, and I could feel my face turning red. No, I'm sure of it. Although I was in another room and didn't hear clearly, I distinctly heard him say he was going to find you and something about a sewer. My face turned pale, and I stood there dumbfounded for a moment before suddenly realizing, oh, I remember now. He did call me. Look at my memory. I paused, then smiled and put my arm around Danny's shoulder, whispering in his ear, I know a place. Maybe we can find your brother there. How about this, tonight, I'll take you there. I concluded by saying. Recently, during the city's sewer renovation project, 2 bodies were found that had been disfigured by sewage. The bodies were so decomposed that their identities could not be determined, and the police are at a loss. They can only treat them as unidentified corpses. A few months later, I was sitting leisurely in my spacious manager's office, flipping through the newspaper. You might ask, why were there only 2 bodies? But I won't tell you that I had already found a hidden spot at the bottom of the valley, dug a large pit, and buried David and his brother along with the burnt-out car.